I lost my period for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
2 whole years. So I was getting my period maybe every 40 to 60 days. Super irregular. I never knew when I was getting it.
Women have a 28-day cycle. And during these 4 phases, they're fluctuating. Their energy, their emotions, their hormones are so different.
Women will get in these like ultra cold ice baths, and we really shouldn't be getting into that cold of water.
The vegan community is absolutely tenacious. If you are a vegan and then, God forbid, you want to explore the possibility of eating meat, you will get shamed on social media.
I think nutrition has become a religion for a lot of people in the way that they identify with it.
A woman can only get pregnant 5 to 7 days out of the month when she's ovulating.
This idea that I think so many women live by, and why we automatically are like, yeah, of course, put me on birth control. Like, I can get pregnant any day, but you can't. You literally cannot.
What is up? Welcome back to the Jeremy Awakens podcast. Today's guest is a powerful voice in the world of holistic women's health, someone helping women reconnect to their bodies, their hormones, and their natural rhythm in a world that is constantly trying to disconnect them. Parker Sloan is a hormone mentor and cycling educator who's speaking truth about the things most people won't. Birth control, gut health, feminine energy, and what real healing actually looks like. Today, we're diving into many different topics: the 28-day cycle, hormonal sovereignty, and how women can reclaim their energy, intuition, and power naturally. Parker Sloan, welcome to the podcast.
What's going on? I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Me too. How did that intro feel?
I felt good. I felt powerful. I'll take it.
You're going to own all that?
I own it.
Let's go.
I own it.
So I told you before we started recording, I really wanted to get you on here because I feel like the world really needs you right now, actually. You know, when I see you, and we haven't had the chance to connect super deeply, but like whenever I do see you, I feel like you're just a beautiful embodiment of health, amazing energy, someone who's really doing the work. And you've been doing the work for a while. Like, I want to know how you even started pursuing this path of holistic health, natural beauty, spirituality, etc.
Yeah. I would say I started pretty young, for sure. I'm still relatively young. I definitely didn't grow up in a household that had any of these things. I would say, you know, there was some spirituality in my house. We didn't have soda or candy in the house, so there was some semblance of like, we're not going to go in the deep end of the processed world of America, but I didn't grow up with any like lens of holistic health, so to say. And I actually grew up as a really picky eater and not that really healthy of a kid. I was in sports and stuff, but I was not at all into
What
health.
sports did you play?
I played soccer and tennis as a kid.
Oh, do you still play at all?
I played tennis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool,
And then
me too.
in high school. Oh yeah. Nice.
Have you dabbled at all with like pickleball and stuff, or no?
Not pickleball. I've played padel,
Okay.
which is fun. It's like, you know, another
Do you enjoy
racket
that?
sports. I did. I really enjoyed it. The
Cool.
times that I've played, I'd like to play more. It's a big thing in Miami now. So
Okay. Sorry, continue.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So, you know, I was active as a kid, but was not at all into like healthy living, so to say. Okay. There was actually a moment that I remember, I think I was in middle school, call it like 12, 13 years old, where my dad was making a green smoothie because that was very trendy at the time and still is. And he starts throwing all this spinach and kale in the blender. And I was like, that's so gross. What are you doing? Why would you? I couldn't even eat salad at that time. I thought every like green thing was disgusting. It's hilarious to look back on now. And I was like, why are you doing that? And he was like, well, my cholesterol is really high and I need to eat more veggies and more greens to get it down. And that, I remember, was such a light bulb moment for me where I realized, oh my God, the food that you eat can affect your health, like for the better. Like it can change your blood for the better. Because you grow up knowing that junk food can be bad for your health. But I didn't really think about it in the reverse to know like healthy food can improve your health. And for whatever reason, that stuck with me really hard.
Yeah.
And I started Googling what foods are good for this, what foods are good for your eyesight, what foods are good for your skin, what foods are good for your energy. And from there, I think my entire life changed.
And how old were you at this time?
I was like 12 or 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a gift to like be shown that knowledge and just pique that curiosity at such a young age.
Totally. My curiosity was so piqued. The world of nutrition, I think since then has totally spoken to me. Just in the way that, you know, food really is medicine and lifestyle is medicine too. And a lot of other holistic modalities are medicine. But the way that food can impact our health either positively or negatively is just so cool to me. It's just cool.
It's crazy, right? Know? It's crazy that like, and again, doctors aren't taught this stuff.
No, they're really not.
Like food directly impacts your mood and your mental health.
100%.
And we have this epidemic going on where there's so many people being over-diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, and depression. If doctors actually had the knowledge and awareness to prescribe different nutritional protocols for their patients, 90% of these diseases would be completely eliminated.
Well, not only that, but I think even a doctor asking their patient, what are you eating? What food are you putting into your body? On top of that, what are your stress levels like? How is your sleep? You're not asked that when you go into a doctor's office because you're feeling an imbalance. It's, you're feeling this imbalance, let's do your blood work, let's check it out. Sometimes it's normal when you don't feel normal. Or if it's not normal, then you're probably given a pill of some sort or some kind of medication. I mean, I have a cousin who is a pediatrician, and she said she only took one class on nutrition when she was in school because it was an elective that she was able to choose. Otherwise, she would have taken nothing on crazy. Food. And it's really the root cause of so many things. So that happens. I go on a health girl kick in a very healthy way from like 12 years old onward, which was super fun. In high school, I feel like it really set me up to have a healthy relationship with the way that I view health foods and health trends, because I wasn't doing it because I saw it on Instagram or because somebody else that I knew was eating a certain way. It was like I created a baseline at such a young age to know what it feels like to feel clean. Yeah. And so I didn't really like party or drink much in high school or in college because I just knew that it made me feel really bad when I did that.
Well, so many girls too, when they're 12, 13, like that's really when you start to become aware of beauty standards, which, by the way, beauty standards for women in 2025 are absolutely absurd.
Especially in Miami.
Yeah, it's especially with the age of AI. Everyone's just using filters. Yeah. It literally blows my mind how like I can be talking to someone on Instagram and then I meet them in person and it literally looks like a completely different human being. Yeah. And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah, the world has become very morphed. It's interesting.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And again, coming back to why I wanted you here, it's like I feel like you're connected to your authentic self. And I'm sure you still have shit to work on and insecurities like we all do.
We all do.
Yeah. But like just the simple fact of being able to show up as your whole natural self, vibrating from that frequency of wholeness, which they talk about so much in Kabbalah. Yeah. When you can operate from a frequency of wholeness where it is truly a belief within yourself that you don't need to chase things externally to feel whole and complete, that's a beautiful energy to live your life from.
Yeah. And you see that lesson across other cultures too, and across other mindful modalities. You know, to sort of tie a bow on the whole, like, how did I get here story is like, I went into high school, I had a healthy way of living, mostly through food, I guess, and getting enough sleep and not, you know, being a crazy child or anything. And then I did yoga for the first time at 17 years old. I was invited to a yoga class. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I can't wait to go to this yoga class to get long and lean and, you know, that kind of yoga body. Like it was a very sort of aesthetic driven excitement for the flow. Yeah. And thank God there was an amazing instructor who taught that flow. It was a candlelit evening class. And I walked out of that. And my first thought was, wow, this is about so much more than the body. So I think that was really my first taste of true spirituality at 17 years old. A couple years later, I get my yoga teaching certification. So I've been an instructor for about 6 years now. And I think that really set the path for looking inward a lot, because with yoga comes a lot of mindful practices, and I was interested in Buddhism and philosophy and all these things. And so I just dabbled in all of it, and that was kind of my scope of the world, and has been since then. And, since then I've started studying Kabbalah, which I think is peak lessons. We can get into that later.
For sure. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, through that, though, I've been through my own health imbalances, which has also brought me to where I'm at now, which has been a blessing in every single way.
What's the biggest health challenge that you've had to overcome?
A couple. So we'll talk a lot on the female cycle today, but I think something that not a lot of people know is I totally went through a hormonal imbalance myself. I lost my period for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
2 whole years.
Is that from birth control?
Well, I thought it was for a while, but I think it was a mix of things. So although I thought I was being healthy all of those years, when you're not educated the right way, as educated as I thought I was, or at least as healthy as I thought I was, right? I was eating whole foods for the most part. I was not eating nutrient dense enough. I was not eating balanced enough. I was just kind of running it. I went into college and I was exercising a lot just because I loved it. So I was weight training and walking 20K steps a day just by nature, because
wow, 20K is a lot.
Because my campus was really big. So I'm just walking all the time. And through that, I end up losing my period. But what happened is that I think I was set to lose it already, because I was over exercising and undernourishing. And then I got on birth control. What I will say is I don't think that birth control made me lose my period, so to say. But what happens is that I was on birth control and I was getting a cycle every month. So I was still bleeding, but when you're on birth control, there's something called a withdrawal bleed. So it's basically a fake period, and it makes you think that you're getting your period just so that things feel normal. When birth control was invented, women would not get their period at all, and it freaked them out, because what happens when you get pregnant? You don't get your period. So women were like, I don't know if I'm pregnant or not. So we have this withdrawal bleed that happens on some pills. I was on that pill. So I'm getting my period, and then via another long story, I basically was off the pill for 2 weeks. I accidentally got off of it. So I asked my doctor, I was like, hey, I've been off the pill for a couple weeks. Do I just get back on it? Is this the right way to go? Can I just start taking it again? And she was like, no, the way to do it is you wait until you get your period again. And then on the first day of your period, you will take the pill again. My period did not come for 3 months. So I called my doctor again and I was like, hey girl, I've had a rough 3 months hormonally. There's been a lot of shifts. This sucks. What do I do? And she was like, okay, don't wait to get your period anymore. Just start taking the pill. And although I knew nothing about integrative health or functional health at the time, thank God I had some semblance of intuition at whatever, I was maybe 18, 19 years old at that time, to think to myself, okay, if I can't get my period naturally, I definitely don't want to take a pill to quote unquote get my period. So I didn't take the pill. And then I didn't get my period for 8 months. And I tried some hormonal therapies. And then 2 years passed and I didn't get it. That's crazy. And I think that, like I said, I think I was setting myself up to lose my period regardless. So I probably would have lost it even without the pill. But because the pill was masking it for so long and giving me my period, so to say, I didn't have it for a long time. And there was a lot of underlying deficiencies happening in my body. I became anemic. I was completely plant-based at the time, but I won't even call it plant-based because I just wasn't eating the right way. I was not so good of a vegan, not eating really processed stuff, but just eating the same thing every day. I wrecked my gut health.
You were eating planta, vegan junk
I
food.
don't know what I was eating. I was eating rice cakes and protein powder and gym stuff because I thought that was healthy. And I messed up my gut. I messed up my hormones. I lose my period. And then I start supplementing with iron and eating a little differently. I get it back and it was irregular for a long time after that. So I was getting my period maybe every 40 to 60 days. Super irregular. I never knew when I was getting it. My mom was constantly giving me birth control tests, even though there was no way I could have been pregnant. It was a very stressful time, very interesting time. And then I dove more into the world of functional integrative health and I was able to get it back. And it's been normal ever since.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's also a really great reminder that pretty much every single obstacle that we experience
Yeah.
gives us the opportunity to transmute the pain into part of our purpose.
100%.
Which is what you did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's crazy though. And I feel like many things, birth control was first introduced, I think, in the 1970s.
Yeah,
1980s.
like 1960s, 70s. Yeah.
And the intention sounds good, right? The intention sounds like freedom for women, like they don't have to worry about getting pregnant from having intercourse. And it took some of that concern away. But like many things with the Western medicine model, they don't look at the full picture.
Totally.
Because when you are shifting some sort of input in your body, in your organs, it's going to affect many other areas. Like our body has this divine intelligence. It's all working together. And I think the biggest issue with healthcare in America is that it's all based on reductionism. It's only looking at, okay, you're depressed. You have a shortage of serotonin. Let's give you an antidepressant. Not being fully cognizant of how that is actually negatively impacting your gut health, which is where you produce 90% of your serotonin.
Right.
So,
you know it.
yeah. Well, and I think also it's distorted, like everything. Birth control has really also distorted women's relationship to their cycle and to their period. It's almost like, oh my gosh, it's my period. I'm bleeding. It's gross, you know? And it's really sad that so many men and women have that perspective, when in reality, it's actually like a beautiful part of the women's cycle and the woman's process.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you bring up a point, which is that a lot of people, I think, also view the cycle as just being on your period or not.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, I mean, how I was brought up. It was always like, I'm either bleeding or I'm not. And when I'm bleeding, it's something to hide. And I have to like hide my pad under my arm in high school and make sure that nobody knows. And when you get your period, it's, you know, I mean, maybe in some households it's like, oh my God, yay. Or it's like, okay, now you have it. Like, this is what you got to do to conceal it as much as you can. And it's this sort of like taboo, kind of embarrassing thing.
How much education would you say is happening around that? Like, because obviously a lot of schools have sexual education.
Yeah.
But I don't think, as far as I remember, that they're educating women on their 28-day cycle and really how to nurture themselves and take care of themselves during this time.
100% not. We have sex ed that nobody really remembers to this day. And we learn that there is a reproductive cycle. You learn about your period, and that's pretty much it. It's that same concept of like, you have your period and this is why you have it. And it has to do with reproduction, and then otherwise you're not on your period and everything is the same, right? And so women grow up and we deal with our hormonal fluctuations and we feel all the different things, and we don't know why we're feeling what we're feeling. So as women, we do have this on average 28-day cycle, and that's really like the textbook cycle, but it actually can average between women, it can average between 21 to 35 days.
Okay.
So it's not just 28 days. A woman's normal is her normal. So if her normal is 21, that's 21. If her normal is 31, it's 31. And through that, there's four main cycles, or there's four main phases, so to say, in that. And we really just know about menstruation, that's one phase, and then not being on menstruation. But there are these other phases that have hormonal fluctuations happening, and it affects everything from our metabolism to our hunger cues, to our motivation to do things, to our mood, to our mental health, to our gut health.
Yeah.
Everything is changing every week of the month.
So we have the luteal phase, the follicular phase, ovulation, and menstruation.
Yes.
And I think the most important thing for women to understand and for men to understand so they can hold space better for the women in their lives is how your energy, your emotions, your hormones are shifting during these four phases.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's zero education on this, by the way.
None. So I learned this just a few years ago, and it actually threw me into everything that I do now. Funny story. I I learned this while I was going through my cycle irregularities. And I remember I was riding bike. This is, I think, during COVID.
Okay.
And I was maybe on day like 45, 50 of my cycle, meaning 45, 50 days since I got my last period, did not know when it was coming again. I'm listening to a podcast. Shout out to Organic Olivia. Your podcast is amazing. It was a episode with Alyssa Vitti, who is a wonderful woman in this space.
She wrote In the Flow, right?
Yes, she wrote In the Flow. She wrote
Great
Woman
book.
Code. She teaches women about cycle syncing and all of these phases. And it was the first time ever that I learned this concept that we have these different phases and it affects all these things that I just spoke about. And it was, I think, the first time in my life that I truly felt a sense of femininity. And I didn't realize how unfeminine I was navigating my life before. I was always girly. I wasn't very girly. I wasn't a tomboy either, but like didn't have a sense of like femininity, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, wow, it's so cool to be a woman. It is so beautiful to have these phases that we cycle through and these different changes. And I got home and I got my period that day. Crazy.
Wow.
Crazy.
Another thing too, that's absolutely wild is, from my understanding, a woman can only get pregnant 5 to 7 days out of the month when she's ovulating. Right?
Yeah.
So girls are 13, 14 years old. They're being put on birth control.
Yeah.
When in reality, if they were actually just taught about these 4 different phases and how their body is functioning during these 28 days, then they would actually have the awareness to understand, oh, wow, I can actually only get pregnant during this short period of time. Why would I poison myself with this contraceptive that's impacting all these other areas of my life in a negative way, that's disconnecting me from my true essence, rather than actually just being conscious,
Understanding the cycle.
of how biology is working.
Yeah. Why don't we take people through it? So we have these 4 phases, right? Starts with menstruation. I will speak on like a 28-day cycle just because it's textbook and it literally breaks up into 4. So that's why we use a 28-day cycle, but it can range anywhere from 21 to 35 days with a few days of fluctuation. I think up to 8 days of variability per month is normal.
Okay.
So that meaning if your cycle is normally every 31 days, but next month you get it maybe 8 more or less days than that, that's still normal. Anything outside of that is not normal. Okay, great. We have this 28-ish day cycle. Starts with menstruation, so you're bleeding, and hormones are at their lowest during this phase, which is why we feel maybe low in energy and low in mood, and our metabolism is totally different during this time. You might feel less hungry. Metabolism is its lowest during this phase too. I also like to view the cycle in terms of seasons. So we literally have these 4 seasons within our body. Menstruation would be like the winter of the body, right? It's time to hibernate. It's time to nourish with really nutrient-dense foods, warm foods, and just like chill and like go inside ourselves. And then we move into the follicular phase. So the period has ended. We've stopped bleeding, and now we're in the follicular phase. And it's kind of like the spring of the body. Things are thawing. Things are getting a little bit warmer. Hormones are rising. And our metabolism is rising. We have different levels of motivation. You can probably exercise more. You can get into your HIIT workouts. You can sweat. All these fun things. And then you have ovulation, which is what we were just talking about. This is the most fertile phase of the cycle. And ovulation itself is really only like 12 to 24 hours. It's literally just an egg dropping and potentially being fertilized if, you go through reproductive activities and if that happens, whether you want it or not. But in the 5 to 6 days before that ovulation happens, before that egg drops, a woman is in her fertile window, which means that she can get pregnant during those days because sperm can live for up to 5 to 6 days. And so if you have intercourse before ovulation, unprotected, and you're not on birth control, in a highly likely scenario, then you can still get pregnant when you actually ovulate, right? Ovulation brings a peak of hormones, mainly estrogen, also a little peak in testosterone. And so our metabolism is totally revving during this time. It's like the summer of the body. We actually become more attractive during this time. So it makes sense because we're literally trying to reproduce, at least evolutionarily speaking, we're trying to reproduce during this time. So our skin gets more plump. Estrogen is making us, have bigger lips and clearer skin and all the things.
Wow.
Hormones drop. And then we move into the luteal phase, which is like the longest phase of the cycle. And this is kind of like the autumn or fall of the cycle. And progesterone is doing a lot of things here. This is where we have to be eating more carbohydrates. Our nutritional needs change completely throughout the cycle. And that's another big thing. And it skews so much, right? Because women are told like, eat this way or that way for your aesthetic goals or for your health goals or whatever it is. But we have to eat differently throughout the entire cycle and throughout the month. If we do the same thing all the time, our hormones are not all the same all the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, we go through the luteal phase and we want to be eating more carbs. Our energy is slowly dipping. If you go as hard as you were a week ago, you're going to feel it in a negative way, especially the week before your period. And then hormones drop again and the whole cycle continues. I wanted to make sure that we actually explained that, but I brought it up because you brought up this idea that we actually can't get pregnant throughout the entire month.
Yeah.
Which is this idea that I think so many women live by, and why we automatically are like, yeah, of course, put me on birth control. Like, I can get pregnant any day, but you can't. You literally cannot.
And it's probably done from a place of fear.
Of course.
Like so many things in our healthcare system, it is pushed on people from a place of fear. Like, if you don't take this birth control, you're going to get impregnated from somebody that you definitely don't want to have a baby with. They literally just indoctrinate you with the most scary scenario rather than actually empowering you.
Yeah.
Like, what you just explained is so empowering for women to understand, because now they understand how their body is working and navigating through these different phases of the month. And now they know how to nourish themselves in the most powerful way and how to show up for themselves. And it's just, it really is just so mind blowing. Like even Parker, like the whole ice bath and cold plunge craze.
Yeah.
There needs to be a conversation towards women that this actually is not beneficial to you at certain points of the month.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you take an ice bath or cold plunge, you are spiking the shit out of cortisol.
Yeah.
And if your nervous system is not in a position to really regulate and handle all of that stress response during that phase of your cycle, you should probably stay away from it, right? Like in your follicular phase, for example, you probably shouldn't cold plunge because that's the more chill.
Well, even more than phase dependent, I think it's even just temperature dependent. So that's something that we've learned recently in the science. Stacey Sims talked about it recently, is that women will get in these like ultra cold ice baths. And we really shouldn't be getting into that cold of water. So we can experience cold therapies, just not as cold as men. In general, I'd say like any very stressful activities on the body, I would not do the week before menstruation, which would be like the late luteal phase.
Yeah.
We can actually take on more stress during the first whole half of our cycle. So like menstruation into follicular phase into like ovulation. So let's call that like first half. But if you're doing anything crazy like HIIT workouts or like, God forbid, Barry's boot camp.
Oh my God.
Or like ice plunging like crazy the week before your period. That's where stress is going to happen. We're naturally in a more sympathetic phase once we ovulate, meaning our nervous system is just a little bit more turned on. So you want to be doing things that are going to chill yourself out a little more rather than like going against the grain in that phase.
So when's the nervous system most activated?
The nervous system is more activated in the second half of the cycle.
Got it. Okay.
In the luteal phase.
So that's when like more parasympathetic things would be beneficial, like calming breath work.
Exactly.
Like
maybe
like some yin yoga.
Yin yoga, Pilates, those types of things. I mean, I recommend strength training through the entire cycle, but you can increase or decrease the intensity of it depending on where you're at. And once you start to live in these ways in terms of the way that you nourish yourself and exercise and even take on different mental health practices through the different phases, you start to feel the right things at the right times, right? So
Yeah.
you'll move into your luteal phase and honor that more naturally. You'll honor it more naturally by literally feeling like, no, I should not push.
Right.
And that's just not a mindset that we see in modern day culture, right? Because we're in the no pain, no gain culture. We're in the push it harder. Like, I need to go harder. If I'm not seeing results, if I'm feeling worse, it's because I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
And it's a very masculine centered.
Such a and this also just goes back to like the last 10 or 20 years, our society trying to program women to believe that they're the same as men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are so fucking different. Like,
Very.
just for starters, men have a 24-hour cycle.
Yeah.
Our energy, hormones, emotions are pretty much consistent every day throughout the month. Women have a 28-day cycle. And during these 4 phases, they're fluctuating. Their energy, their emotions, their hormones are so different.
Yeah.
And we need to honor that biology.
Yeah.
We can't fight nature. And that's why I think in the future, and hopefully in the near future, I think that there might be a push towards nutrition specifically for women based on their time of the month.
Yeah.
Rather than like, okay, I'm keto, I'm carnivore, I'm paleo, I'm plant-based. It's like, no, I'm just consuming high quality nutrients based on my exact need for that time of the month.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Because, well, these diets that you just named, right? The keto, the carnivore, the plant-based, the vegan, whatever it is, they all inherently mean doing that all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And being consistent with that. And you know what? Sometimes with my cycle, I'm way more plant-based, and sometimes with my cycle, I feel like a carnivore. I'm not gonna lie. And I've been on the spectrum of being totally vegan, and I've been on the spectrum of eating a lot of meat. I was never fully carnivore. Again, once you get in tune, you start to feel when your body needs these things, right? So maybe when you're menstruating, you're like, I need a steak. I need a steak, and it's all I want to eat, and I want the stews, and I want the soups, and all the things. And then when you're getting into your follicular phase or ovulating, you can't even really think of foods like that. There's some points in my cycle where I can't even really think of meat too much, and I just want like greens and salads and fresh foods, and it makes complete sense in alignment with how my gut microbiome is in that phase and how my lifestyle is and where my metabolism is at. So it's really cool to feel in tune with it once you start to, sort of manipulate your lifestyle to be in sync, and then it just all flows exactly as it should.
Yeah. Overall, the vegan lifestyle. Right? Because I think when we first got connected, like at the beginning of the pandemic.
I think I was vegan.
Yeah, I think you were vegan
Yeah.
too. And it's interesting how a lot of vegans from 4 or 5 years ago are no longer vegan.
Yeah.
And I think a big reason for that is because they started to realize, oh, wow, maybe I don't actually feel most optimal when I am only eating plants, fruits, grains. Maybe I actually need some high quality fats from animal sources like eggs, like steak, like chicken to fully nourish me.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful that we're actually removing some of the dogma.
Yeah.
Because nutrition can be so dogmatic, which is ridiculous.
Extremely dogmatic.
Like the fights people get in on social media is fucking hilarious. Like people attach so much of their identity. Like people will have the word vegan tattooed on them. So what happens when you're actually really craving that steak? You almost feel shame.
Yeah.
And then you get shamed by the way, the vegan community is absolutely tenacious. If you are a vegan and then, God forbid, you want to explore the possibility of eating meat, you will get shamed on social media. You will get disowned by these vegan people. And that's just a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we all need to listen to our bodies, and we all need to nourish ourselves with what is actually going to benefit us most individually.
Totally. I think nutrition has become a religion for a lot of people in the way that they identify with it.
For sure.
So once people see that other people turn the other way or go to the other church, so to say, it's like, what are you doing? You absolutely can't do that, and you're wrong, and you're probably ruining society because of it.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And it sucks. It sucks because I think a lot of people are just trying to find their way and to feel good.
Yeah.
And that brings in the whole conversation about just lifestyle in America and how everyone is probably nervous system dysregulated, and nutrition is one of those, I think, go-to ways to feel good and feel balanced, because we have to do it every single day. Right? Every day we're eating, unless you're doing a fast or whatever. But like for most of the population, we're eating every single day. So it's like, okay, I can either eat something that's good for me, or eat something that's bad for me. And I know that sometimes I feel good eating certain foods, and sometimes I feel not good eating certain foods. So like, what can I do to feel good? Because people are just, I think, freaking out these days. We live in a very interesting society here in America. So that being said, when somebody switches from vegan to carnivore or vice versa, it's like seen as so jarring to other people because it's become an identity trait.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are right and wrong ways to do it, right? I think that if somebody wants to be plant-based, there's also something to be said about the spiritual component about being vegan or vegetarian. I just came back from India, and I was vegetarian for 2 weeks while I was there.
Is that an amazing? Was that your first time there?
Yeah, it was my first time there. It was amazing. And the food was amazing, right? But I'm eating like so many different forms of plants and colors every single day. And I don't think that most people are doing that when they're vegan in America, right? Like vegan or vegetarian. I mean, even there, like they're eating dairy, so they're getting really high quality sources of B vitamins and calcium and vitamin D and all of that. So they're not totally vegan. At least where I was in India, they were vegetarian.
Did you see a lot of fat people in India?
I did actually.
Really?
I did. There was, I mean, a lot of people who were very, very malnourished for sure, and a lot of people who were overweight. Yeah, I mean, the people who were like eating every single day, it's a very carb heavy culture. I think that there's a little bit of imbalance maybe in the food, at least where I was, but India is so big, so I really can't speak on it. It's like coming to America and being like, I traveled to America, but did you go to New York, or did you go to California, or did you go to Utah? It's very different all across the board.
True, it is.
But that being said, there are right ways to do it and there are wrong ways to do it in terms of nutrition. And I'm not going to bash veganism at all, because I think that people, for the most part, have good intent. I do think you have to be very knowledgeable on what you're consuming, because there's a way to do it wrong and you can hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my biggest thing with, I mean, again, I have like friends who are vegan. I really don't give a shit like what your nutrition is, as long as you are doing what you feel like is best for you. I think that's the most important thing. But I think the biggest issue with the vegan diet is just a lack of healthy fats, specifically DHA and EPA, which we know are so important for boosting your mood and your overall brain health. And those come from animal-based products like pasture-raised eggs, grass-fed beef, wild-caught salmon.
Yeah.
You can't really find those in plants.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit in spirulina, right? But like, I just don't see how vegans are getting as many nutrients as they really need to thrive.
Well, they definitely need to supplement.
Yeah, a lot.
And that's a given. But on the same token, a lot of people who are carnivore or just omnivorous, right? Like just your average person who's like eating a whole food diet and eating both plants and animals. A lot of people are supplementing everything nowadays. So to say that, a vegan has to supplement isn't necessarily a bad thing, because like we're all doing it. We're all taking different things. I try to not supplement much at all, but whatever. And so, yes, I think if you're vegan, you probably have to supplement B12. You definitely have to supplement B12, DHA from plant-based sources, which I think is different from it's coming from different sources of algae and whatnot. But that's where doing it right comes into play, and where knowledge is really important, because you could be vegan for all the best reasons and do it for the animals, and that's really, really beautiful. And do it for your own soul's evolution, right? There's something to be said about like the evolution of the soul if you're following things like Hinduism or different religious practices. So all of that is not to be discounted. And I think it is left out of a lot of these conversations.
Yeah. Is
but
the spiritual aspect of it?
It's the spiritual aspect of it. Yeah. I think a lot of people just look at the nutritional component and it's like, you're not getting all that you need on a vegan diet. Like, you're hurting yourself. But it's like, well, why are they doing it? Which is a really beautiful way to live life if your intention is there for it. But you got to do it right. Do your research, follow people in the space who are doing it correctly, follow experts in the field, read your books, take the supplements that you need to take. Even being vegetarian, I think, is a step way above in terms of easily being able to get your nutrients because you're eating things like eggs and hopefully high quality sources of dairy, milk, yogurt, these types of things that you're not getting on a vegan diet. So
okay, Parker, you know what's actually interesting though, because when I think about the vegan diet also, if you think about every single nutrition or health documentary on Netflix, for example, pretty much every one of them is pushing and projecting a vegan diet, a plant-based diet to be superior. And that makes me think, why? Like, why is there this strong push towards this vegan and plant-based lifestyle? And I don't think it's necessarily with pure intentions.
Okay.
I think a lot of it is coming from people like Bill Gates, who is all about plant-based meat and crickets and all this weird shit that he's trying to indoctrinate the world with, and that concerns me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it can be very misleading, and you watch one of these documentaries, it's very convincing, right? When you see it, it's oh, wow. Like, wow, maybe meat is the root of all evil, And it's just I'm a little skeptical of that.
I think we can speak on agendas for many different things. We can speak on the agendas for birth control and the reason why women haven't been taught these things, and on the vegan diet and on the carnivore diet and all these things. And it seems like in the world of health and wellness, there's always this sort of good guy, bad guy thing happening.
Right.
I think that people always want to feel like they're on the upper hand of something, or like they're fighting, the oppression of what's happening. And oh no, birth control is due to this agenda of like trying to suppress women. So now I'm not going to take birth control, and I'm going to learn about my cycle, which is a great thing.
I'm going to grow armpit hair.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Can we talk about that too?
Oh God, that's a good.
I had this friend, and she'll remain nameless for this podcast. And she's like the most feminine girl, like beautiful, amazing, close friend. And she started just letting her armpit hair grow. And I'm like, interesting. And I had a conversation with her about this, and she's like, you know what? Like, it just feels right to me. And I was like, all right, respect. Like, it's not my cup of tea, but fuck, like, we're not dating or anything. You're just a friend. Okay. But then we're out somewhere, and a girl comes up to her and she says, thank you so much for just like expressing your most authentic self. It inspired me to do the same. And she lifts up her shirt, and she has armpit hair too. And I'm like, oh my God, look at what you've done. You've started this revolution of women just growing body hair from all these places.
Okay, so I'll turn this interview around for a second. How did that make you feel?
I mean, like I said, honestly, if that's genuinely what makes you feel most connected and most beautiful, for sure, go and do it. Like, I wouldn't necessarily love my partner to have hair on her armpits. That's just my personal preference. Call me an asshole, call me judgmental, whatever.
Look, some girls like a beard on a guy, and some girls like them shaved. So it's fine.
Yeah, we all have preferences. Are you ready to feel limitless in 2025? I'm talking limitless physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, financially. This is your sign to try out microdosing for 30 days. We have a very special opportunity for podcast listeners. You can get started for only $222. This includes the medicine being shipped to you, the highest quality, fair trade, organic, sustainably sourced microdoses in the world at your doorstep. And you also get access to live group coaching calls with me, our private community. This is your sign to take ownership of your life in 2025. If you're ready, hit the link in the description, and I can't wait to see you on the inside.
Look, some girls like a beard on a guy, and some girls like them shaved. So it's fine.
Yeah, we all have preferences. It didn't, the thing that kind of like just, I don't even want to say triggered me was that now, because she got validation from it, from someone else externally, now I could tell like she's probably going to keep it going for that reason, rather than maybe like, even if she wants to say, no, like there's girls counting on me. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it brings up an interesting point, which is like hair grows on our body.
Yeah.
Who taught us to take it off? I don't know. I'd have to really look into that specifically. Like, when did shaving armpits come into the feminine beauty standard? But you have to question, you know? Like, there's different ways to groom ourselves between men and women to feel more feminine or more masculine. But, like, if a woman feels like she's been doing that only because someone told her to, then more power to her if she wants to, you know,
for
grow
sure.
out her armpit hair.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It was just an interesting observation.
It is an interesting observation. And I think it does touch on this point that we were speaking about, which is this constant feeling of oppression and having to fight the big guy, right? Which comes then back to the whole diet wars. It's literally a diet war.
You were talking about the agendas.
Yeah, and the agendas, which that's a whole rabbit hole of a conversation. And I don't know what Bill Gates is up to. I haven't looked into him enough, but I know he's a very controversial guy.
Well, you know what was also interesting is the documentary on Bill Gates went live on Netflix.
I haven't seen it.
A couple months before the pandemic happened. And they were painting Bill Gates to be this amazing philanthropist who just wants to elevate the consciousness of humanity. And then a couple months later, COVID happens. And that same guy, Bill Gates, is one of the main voices pushing the vaccine, making it a mandate. There's no coincidences in this world. Everything is planned. Everything is manipulated for a specific agenda. And Bill Gates, in my humble opinion, is one of the more evil people in the world. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, genius, Microsoft, amazing, great. But it's like, bro, like, dude, the shit, like all the stuff that's going to come out with Epstein and Bill Gates, like Melinda left his ass because she knows what's up. She knows what's up.
What I'll say on the topic of agendas is that I think for every single thing that we've spoken about and will speak about, there is probably some kind of agenda behind. I think to say, no, agendas don't exist and there's no conspiracy theories here and XYZ is a little bit ignorant. And I definitely go down the rabbit hole of these agendas, so to say. But it's always going to circle back to where are we at now and what can we do about it, which always comes back to just living a little bit more balanced, right? So whether it's about diet or whether it's about how we're working out or whether it's about how we're balancing our hormones or, you know, managing our lifestyles or whatever, if we're being extreme, you're probably not in the right place.
Yeah.
Release the dogma, come back to balance, do what feels right, and bring in more knowledge about your body and about your lifestyle, and you're probably going to be in a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I actually have a question to ask you about how you balance your masculine and feminine energies.
Okay.
Before that, just to finish this whole agenda conversation, you know, we hear the term thrown around a lot, the demonic agenda or the matrix.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the demonic agenda is really just doing its best to disconnect us from our truest essence. How are they doing that? They're putting fluoride in the water. They're making alcohol easily accessible. They're making porn easily accessible.
Right.
They're feeding birth control to 13-year-old girls.
Yeah.
They're putting all these horrible, deadly chemicals in our food supply. They're spraying fields with glyphosate. That is the demonic agenda at play. And then you throw in Anthony Fauci, you throw in Bill Gates, you throw in Big Pharma. We have to reconnect to ourselves and cultivate sovereignty.
Yeah.
So we are not blinded by all of the distraction.
Yeah.
That is the most important job that we have as humans, is to really take sovereignty over our own bodies and our own health.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now going back to your journey navigating masculine and feminine energy, because I'm actually curious, because you're a very ambitious person, you know. It's really cool. Again, this is just my like view from the outside without really like dropping in deep with you, is you're doing a lot of interesting projects, you're teaching, you're really living a life aligned with your purpose, which I think is like the most beautiful thing.
Thank you.
That's like really why we're here, is to pursue our passions and share our gifts with the world, right? So you're doing a lot of work with, what's the chocolate company?
The Conscious Bar.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Yaniv, if you're watching this. Sorry, bro. Love you, dude. Okay, so you're doing a lot of work with the Conscious Bar.
Yeah.
You just started your own podcast.
Yeah.
You're teaching. I think you're doing a little bit of coaching as well.
Yeah.
Creating content, all of these things,
Going
right?
to school. Yeah.
Yeah, going to school. Like, how do you approach being super driven and ambitious while also tapping into your feminine energy and staying there and not veering too dominant where you're like just always grinding?
Yeah. I think if I didn't have a sense of spirituality, it would be very hard. Truly. I think it's interesting because everything that I do outwardly is completely reflective of what I'm practicing inwardly. So like I'm studying to get my master's, right, in nutrition. And with that, I'm also taking on all the practices that I've learned in the past and continue to learn. And then I'm also putting that out into the world. And then with my podcast, I'm taking everything that I've learned and continue to learn and put that out into the world. The Conscious Bar is like the funnest project in the world that I'm a part of, which is, even with that, my role entails speaking on the nutrition and the science behind the amazing ingredients that are in our chocolates, chocolate itself being like really, really good for you, or cacao being really good for you, and then being able to share that with the world. So I do think that a really big purpose in this life for me is to nourish people. And to me, that means a lot of different things. And it means nourishing people with knowledge. It means nourishing people with mindset. Because I think that even saying one enlightening thing to someone, not to say I'm enlightened by any sense, but one inspiring thing during a yoga class or during a podcast or during a conversation that shifts their way of how they view the world is a sense of nourishment, right? You're literally planting seeds that you just have to hope they continue to water. And I hope that through the work that I keep giving out, it helps them to keep watering it. And that's why I'm here, you know? And I think I'm very much in my journey, and I'm very much in my process of figuring out how to balance all of it, because I do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it's all very intertwined, and in that it's the way that I perceive all of it on a daily basis that keeps me in line with that, you know, like that feminine masculine push. The masculine being that yang driven, going hard, knowing that I need to show up for myself every single day, and the yin being like, okay, I'm still a woman and I need to rest when I need to rest, and I need to lean into my softness, because if I go way too hard, I'm going to burn myself out, right? I'm not just going to become hypermasculine, I'm going to burn myself out. And I felt burned out, and it doesn't feel good. And I thank God felt burned out, because now I know what that feels like, and I can help people who feel that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't even think I can have a perspective like that if I didn't have some sort of connection to something greater.
Yeah.
Which you can call universe or God or creator or whatever it is. And so I think a lot of my spiritual and mindful practices have helped me to shape the way that I navigate all these activities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our society really rewards masculine behavior and tendencies. It's like work harder, get more shit done, accomplish this, chase the next thing.
Yeah.
Which serves its purpose. But I feel like right now, the feminine leadership and that embodiment and energy is so important in all aspects of life, including business, because there's this level of softness and this level of presence and this level of nourishment that the feminine provides that most men just don't have the ability to tap into.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, we need that harmony.
Yeah. And I think it's tough to show up with your femininity a lot of the time because it is perceived as soft and that's perceived as weak, but it's not, because the ironic thing is that the more and more that a woman shows up too much in her masculine, it will burn her out. And she's also not really taken that seriously, or she's, perceived as bad things. Right?
Yeah. So I'm actually curious, and this is a conversation, I think is important to have, because I think one thing I noticed when I travel to other countries is like there's more men and women that are in relationships platonically just as friends. In America, and maybe it's Miami, but I think it's like just the culture here. It's almost like if you see a guy and girl together, people just assume they're fucking and hooking up.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely for sure a Miami thing too. But yeah, like hyper elevated here.
Yeah, like when I'll post a story and it'll be with like a couple girlfriends.
Automatically assume that.
Yeah, like I'll get
going
messages. I'll get messages from girls saying like I'm a fucking just like
a player.
Exactly. And then like dudes are just like sending me ridiculous shit. I'm like, yo, these are actually truly just friends that I've never hooked up with in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know for you, like being in the space that you're in, obviously you were in a relationship for a long time. Mm-hmm. What's your experience been like with the masculine in terms of feeling like they're holding space in a powerful way, like making you feel safe in friendship versus like having another agenda?
It's interesting because I've had to experience that both in relationship and out of relationship, right? So if you're in relationship, making sure that you're keeping healthy boundaries between the other male figures that are in your life and male friends. And then when you're out of a relationship, making sure that people sort of know like, what's my agenda, what's your agenda, and having to navigate that whole thing, which is funny. It's funny. And I think honestly, communication is just so important. And that's probably my biggest takeaway from any relationship at all in life, whether it's with family or with friends, or when you're in a long-term relationship, when you're in a committed relationship. And I think a lot of it comes down to intuition and being able to suss out, so to say, the dynamics that you're in with someone. Yeah. And then if you feel something, not, letting things go overboard, or just kind of communicating through body language and through words, right? Because body language really is most of communication. So it's an interesting one. I haven't really dived into
how have
that
the last
line
5
of
months
thinking.
been? Like, have some weird shit happened? I'm just gonna ask you straight up. Like,
Okay, expand on your question.
Well, because I'm just curious. Like the last 5 or 6 months since you've been out of relationship, right? Like, have you experienced more men?
Totally.
Yeah, because there's that awareness of like, oh shit.
Yeah,
like Parker's.
I was in a long-term relationship. I was in a relationship for like 5 years, and so being out of it, I definitely have experienced more men approaching me because they know that I'm single after so long. But I'm like really in an intrinsic mode right now. I'm both very outwardly social, and I love to be out and mingle with people in general, like just in social situations. Yeah. But this is a huge growing phase for me, and it's a really exciting time because of all the things that I'm doing, and I get to really harness all that energy into myself. So I feel very empowered in this phase in my life, and I just take everything as it comes, to be honest. I just take it as it comes. As a woman, I think all women will relate to this. If somebody's maybe coming on to you or flirting with you or has more of an agenda, or if it's somewhere in between, and it's just, maybe this goes back to the spiritual component of how I view my life and how I flow through it, but I literally just flow through it all. I try not to overthink anything or set a bunch of rules on things. It's just like, how do I feel in this moment? Yeah. And that really comes back to presence, actually. Being ultra present has been one of the best things I've done with my life. How do I feel in this moment? It's not, okay, but last week I was telling myself I wanted to be alone or only be by myself, or I'm not dating, or whatever it is. Or thinking of the future of when somebody's talking to you in the moment, it's like, where is this going to lead? And where does that conversation lead? And what are they going to think? And it's like, if you can just be like right here, right now, you're going to do so much for yourself. And that applies to, I think, every single aspect of life.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like you were, and again, I'm just asking this, I'm not, again, not trying to throw anyone under the bus or anything like that. I really just am curious genuinely for my own knowledge and like my own experience. Do you feel like, did you also feel really empowered in a majority of that relationship in terms of like pursuing your path fully and like fully creating, or were there parts that you felt like you had to suppress in that process?
I feel like any form of suppression that I felt came from limiting beliefs that I created for myself. And although there were different reasons why I might have wanted to leave the relationship, I knew I'd also convinced myself that being in it, I wasn't doing everything that I wanted to do. And I knew that being out of it, it would open up doorways within myself to probably do more and express myself more. I could get into specifics, but you know, we're on a podcast, so
it sounds like the perfect place to get into specifics, no? Right?
Jeremy is that guy.
I'm that fucking guy.
You know what I'll say for women who might be able to relate is that when you're in a field that is very parallel to your partner's, it can feel either really empowering, or it can feel like maybe there's a little bit of a power dynamic there, depending on the partner.
Right.
And if you feel like maybe there's some jealousy involved, or like, does that partner really want to see you succeed, or do they just want to see you succeed under their wing or via the opportunities that they give you, that can create a lot of dissonance.
Oof.
And I did feel that a little bit, but I'm not going to blame him because, again, like I've said, like everything comes down to, for me, this spiritual component of life. And I understand that everyone has their things and everyone has their tikkuns, right? As we would say in Kabbalah. And anything he experienced was because of anything that he needed to experience. And anything that I experienced was because of everything I needed to. So if I ever felt, again, suppressed, it was because of a limiting belief that I was creating for myself. So like, did I tell myself the story that I wouldn't be able to succeed as much if I left the relationship? I did tell myself that for a long time, and it created a lot of fear to not be in it. But I also knew deep down that it was just a limiting belief. And of course, as things go, as soon as the relationship ended, the craziest doors opened for me and the craziest opportunities and the craziest people I met. And it was like, it was all just a story, and like God showed me that like right away, which is amazing. And there was also amazing opportunities that I had in the relationship, and there was a lot of beauty there as well. But you know, if you have not read the 4 Agreements, I recommend that everyone reads the 4 Agreements. And I think it's rule number 3 that says, rule number 3 is, I think, don't take things personally. But yeah, it's don't take things personally, right? Like it's usually just yourself that's setting limitations for yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of no matter how bad it is. And if you keep taking it, it's because you keep taking it, not because the other person keeps giving it to you. It's like something for you to learn, and the boundaries that you need to set with yourself or
amazing.
Change.
That's amazing reflection. It's cool how you really are taking full ownership for whatever part you played.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think oftentimes after a relationship ends, it's so easy to just talk shit about the other person, especially if things don't end in a very civil way.
Yeah.
And you've probably learned a lot of this on your spiritual journey. It's like when you talk shit about somebody else, you are doing yourself so much harm and damage in that process. You are literally not doing anything to serve anyone, because your words our vibration, and that vibration is going to impact your reality, whether you're talking shit about someone else or you're talking shit about yourself. You have to be super conscious of the language that you're using.
Yeah.
You know,
your words are one of the most powerful spiritual tools that you have to either affect your life negatively or positively. So if you're talking bad about someone, it will reflect back. And if you talk great about people, it will reflect back. So thank God I have taken on these practices from a very young age, and especially in the past year with studying Kabbalah. And I can humbly say that one of the best practices I took on after any relationship that I've gotten out of is that I don't speak negatively about the people that I was with. And I just try to share the positive, even when it is not done in reverse.
Yeah. That's the real test, though.
Yeah.
What would you say is another really big lesson that you've learned in Kabbalah?
Oh, man. Big lesson that I've learned in Kabbalah. I think we were not recording when I said this one, but the biggest lesson that has stuck with me is certainty over logic. Certainty over logic means that you are in full trust, even when your rational mind is trying to tell you everything is wrong. And it's a protection mechanism. Our brains are always going to try to be in protection mode and survival mode and be like, look, this thing, you're feeling nervous, you're not prepared, we're not okay. Things are going wrong. And that is a voice that is trying to protect you. But you have to know that you are not your evolutionary voice. And if you are connected to some higher source, whether that's universe or God or creator or whoever it is, and have trust and certainty throughout the process, you're good. I went last year I went through the most internal trials and tribulations I've ever felt in my life. And the amount of anxiety that I would wake up with every single day and stress and just questioning of life for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Because then I remembered. It's funny, the breakup actually happened right before Rosh Hashanah. And I experienced Rosh Hashanah in New York at the Kabbalah Center. And a huge lesson they kept pushing was certainty over logic, certainty over logic. And I was like, my rational mind is trying to tell me that so much is wrong. But even if it feels like things are supposed to go this way or that way, it doesn't really matter because I'm so trustworthy in the process. It's one thing to be trustworthy after things have changed. Like, life feels chaotic now, and then once this thing happens, okay, now I have trust because, like, thank God things went okay. What if you can have trust in the process, in the chaos? That will change your life. It is your life.
Wow.
It is your life.
Yo. Sheesh. That was amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah. Certainty in the creator. I mean, I was telling you, like, I saw you. Was that yesterday? 2 days ago? I saw you.
A couple days ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I was just a challenging week where I wasn't even feeling like getting out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And just ruminating on what if I would have done this differently with the business? What if I would have hired this person? What if I would have pivoted in that direction? And was just feeling so down on myself.
Yeah.
Just like, oh my gosh, I should be so much further along.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to talk to Ariel. I just knew I needed to shift the perspective on everything that was happening. And that's literally what he said. Like you're just not, you don't have enough certainty with the creator.
Yeah.
Same thing with relationships too.
Yeah.
Is like, you have to have certainty in the creator. And like, when I do feel that frequency, it's such a beautiful feeling because you feel like you're being divinely guided and protected. Like
Completely.
whatever is happening in this life is happening for you.
100%.
And there's a very unique reason that the dots are being connected in this way.
Yeah.
Like every single person that is coming into your life, even if it's just for a couple minutes, is coming into your life for a reason.
Yeah.
And every single event and experience that's taking place is also happening for a very divine purpose.
100%. I think we can all look back to moments in our lives when we were not feeling very certain. And then we remember something happened afterward that made it all make sense.
Yeah.
So if you
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Hindsight's always 20/20. But if you can remember that now, even one event, you have to know that it's constantly happening at every moment in your life. Constantly. And you don't know if you're going to see it next week, and you don't know if you're going to see it 2 years from now. If you believe in this, see it in your next lifetime, right? Karmically. But you have to know that it's constantly happening, and you are constantly protected. And if you are living out of certainty, it means you are disconnected from source, whatever that means to you. And you're going to be living on a different frequency that is not going to allow the doors to open. So it's ironic, right? It feels like a paradox. You feel like you want to be in the fear and in the lack of trust, because it's like, if I'm not worrying, then I'm not doing something. That's what it comes down to a lot of the time. You feel like worrying feels like a sense of action.
Yeah,
there's
like
nothing
stress.
else I can do, so I have to be stressed about it.
Yeah.
And you're cutting off so much energy that wants to flow in. But if you can be in that and be in the chaos and be trustworthy, oh my God, the doors that will open.
Other than the relationship coming to an end, what is a recent experience you had where you felt like things were just really chaotic, they were really uncertain, and you were forced to just lean into your connection with the Creator to get through it?
I have a really good example, actually. I was in India. I didn't get sick at all on my trip, but it was warned by a lot of people, like, you could get sick, don't drink the water, don't eat the street food, all the things. And thank God the entire time I did not get sick. But I don't know if I was experiencing some change in altitude or environment, or if I took some interesting Ayurvedic supplements or whatever it was.
Yeah.
There was one day, we're in a huge group of people, like 20 something people, going on this tour, and I felt so off. I felt like I had been struck by lightning. It felt like my head was buzzing. It was very, very hot. I felt like I was going to pass out. And me, like 2 years ago, would have been extremely stressed about that. I had a little bit more stress, a lot more stress about my health, and like hypochondriatic tendencies where I would just be like so scared and immediately be like, oh my God, I'm dying. Or what's wrong with me? So I didn't have that, but It was like, I felt fearful. I'm like in the middle of India, and it was scary. Okay. And everyone's feeling normal. And I was just trying to keep it to myself because I was trying to overcome. I was trying to not be the person that I used to be. And we keep walking around, and I'm feeling really dizzy, and I'm feeling really weird. And then we step into this temple. And it's loud, and people are singing, and they're like, walk around the temple 3 times. And I was like, I don't even think I can walk. Like, I literally don't think I can walk. Like, I need to sit down. And I walked around once, and then I sat down. And I had this huge reflective moment where I was like, I can either be the person that I've always been and freak out, or I can just sit and go inward, because I am my own best friend, and I'm constantly in certainty, and I'm constantly protected. And I sat and I closed my eyes and I did breath work amidst the chaos of people singing and chanting and walking around in circles. And I think for like 30 minutes I sat there, and I stepped out of that temple feeling so much better than I had stepped feeling into it, or than I had felt stepping into it. I felt better than all the days that I had been there. I was so charged. So
you really put the tools into practice.
It was like, I really had to put it into practice. It's easy to sit here in this moment on this podcast where I'm thankfully feeling very comfortable and very energetic, and talking about certainty over logic and trusting in the Creator.
Yeah.
But when you're in a moment where you feel like your actual physiology is not working, and you're in a foreign country where you don't know if people will be able to help you at all, and you feel like something like is actually genuinely physically wrong with you, like, did I eat something wrong? Do I have like an amoeba in my system? Like, what is going on? My head felt so weird. And I was able to put those spiritual, divine, also physiological, breathwork practices coming from my yogic background and all of that into play in that moment. I also had a voice telling me, like, this is the moment for you to put things into work. You thought you'd be fine. You knew you wouldn't get sick coming to India, and I totally could have, and that would have been another challenge to just overcome and be in. Yeah. But it was like, how can you be in this moment, and how can you react? And so
or how can you respond and not react?
Yeah, respond and not react. Exactly.
What would you say was like the most if there's one moment or experience from India that you're gonna like never forget and forever hold on to, what would that be?
I saved a dog.
You saved a dog.
I saved a dog, a puppy, when I was there. Honestly, I could answer this so many ways. There's so many things that I took away from India and lessons that I took away, but for whatever reason, that's coming up, and so I'll tell that story. We were walking one day in the morning, and we hear like intense screaming. It sounded like a child screaming. We're like, what is going on? And it would not stop. And then we keep walking down the path, and there's like 3 big dogs barking toward this one smoothie shop. And then I look inside the smoothie shop, and there's this little puppy like shaking, shivering, and this girl's holding it. And I'm like, is that your dog? Like, what happened? They're like, no, these dogs are attacking it. We don't know whose dog this is. And it had a collar, but it didn't have any like tag on the collar. And I'm like, wow, this is a puppy. This is a baby. Like, who's going to take care of this dog? They're like, we can't take care of the dog. We can't take it back to the ashram. But I had to just forget about it, right? I was like, this is not my business. There's a lot of animals and people suffering in this world. I just have to keep going. I was on my way somewhere, so we keep going.
Yeah.
We circled back there around the afternoon, and I just think to myself, I'm like, I wonder how that puppy's doing. And I look to my right, and the puppy is inside another store. I'm like, oh my God, there's the puppy. So I asked the woman taking care of it, I'm like, was that your dog? She's like, no, I have no idea whose dog this is.
Are they speaking English there, by the way?
They are speaking English,
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part. For the most part. There's people who do and people who don't. She's like, I have no idea whose dog this is. It's just shown up at my place now. I don't know what to do, and it can only be here till 10 p.m. And I'm like, this is now my responsibility, obviously. Yeah. I'm thinking, like, can I take this dog back home? What am I going to do? We take the dog to the hotel. We see if the hotel owners can take care of it. They can't. We end up walking in the nighttime around all of Rishikesh, asking people, is this your dog? Is this your dog? It's nobody's dog. No hints. One person said, I think I've seen somebody walking that dog, but I don't know. I don't know whose it is. Losing faith, but not. There was a moment where I was like, actually, what am I going to do? Is this a test to just like be okay with like the suffering of the world? Like I was getting quite emotional. I named the dog. I named her Rishi, like Rishikesh. Anyway, we end up going and turning down this one alleyway. Dogs are literally like running after us. Like big dogs are barking. I have to scream at the dogs to like not, attack the dog that we had in our hands. And we end up finding this one like really cool cafe hostel situation with these young people. And we tell them the whole story, and they're like, oh my God, this dog is so cute. Let us help you. They start calling these shelters that take good care of the dogs. But we're not really going to find anything out till the next morning. And we were leaving at 6 a.m. to go to the next town. So I just have to fully trust in every part of that moment that things are going the right way. To end the story, we leave the dog there because they're like, whatever happens, we'll end up taking in the dog because she's so cute. Thank God. The next day, I get an Instagram message from the girl, one of them who owns that cafe. And she's like, you'll never believe it. The owner of this dog showed up to our event that we were having. Like they were having some sort of, let's say, yoga event. Yeah. And the owner just happened to be signed up for their event, shows up, and she's like, oh my God, that's my dog that I've been looking for. So we left the dog at the exact right place that she needed to be be found with the safest, most caring people. And that was really cool. Maybe not my biggest spiritual lesson from India, but it was because it took a lot of trust and there was a lot of emotion involved. But yeah.
That's really cool. Do you have any cool travel plans this summer?
Okay. Next week, I'm actually going to Austin.
Okay.
I will be at the Health Optimization Summit.
Oh,
it's
nice.
a conference that I was going to in London for the past couple of years, and now it moved to Austin, which is super cool. There'll be a lot of great speakers there. I'm sure you know the entire lineup. If you looked at it, you'd know a lot of the people who are on there.
Yeah.
That'll be cool. A couple weeks later, I'm going to New York. My friend Sabrina and I are going to be going to celebrate her birthday and also go to the opening of Sun Life that is happening there in Soho.
Sun Life Organics?
Sun Life Organics is opening in New York. I think I'm going to Costa Rica 1 or 2 times. I've never been, but there's some plans to go there. Been? Yeah, I've never been. I'm so excited though. Other than that, I don't have any specific plans, but I hope to go somewhere else exotic and different. Cool. Yeah.
Do you have, what was I going to ask you about? Do you have any curiosity or desire to explore plant medicine?
I've never explored plant medicine, except for marijuana, but I actually had really terrible experiences with weed. I don't know if I've shared this with you. Maybe I have, but I mean, long story short, I'm very sensitive to a lot of things.
Me too. Yeah.
So like caffeine. I mean, I can't even have like a little bit of caffeine. I take it all as a blessing because it forces me to be like ultra clear in my system, and I think I'm very like internally tapped in because of it. But like it'd be cool to be able to enjoy like coffee every now and then.
I thought you were a big matcha person. Am I crazy?
I was, and then I realized it actually wasn't that good for me. And maybe my system will change, and maybe it's like a cyclical thing. But for now, like caffeine just ends up really not working out for me.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I feel my best off of it for sure. And the few times that I've dabbled with marijuana, I've had some good experiences and some like actually really wild, terrible bodily reactions. Like my entire body shakes, and I don't know if there's like any doctors listening to this podcast and can explain this to me, like let me know.
I don't think doctors are going to be able to help you. Let's be honest.
You know what? Or whoever.
Yeah.
Even with like large doses of CBD, I went to this like CBD farm one time and was having way too many samples, and like every one of my muscles was shaking in my body. We like had to call an ambulance. It was kind of weird. It was the whole thing. And I'm like not the person to just like call an ambulance. It was the one and only time in my life. Thank God, whatever, like hopefully it never happens. That happened, but it was very weird and very odd. And I don't know if I'm allergic to it or what, but the point is that I think that has scarred me a little bit to enter other forms of plants that alter my state. Yeah. Plants or fungi that alter my state. I've also felt a lot of really great things with breath work and meditation that I think can tap into the same place. And I know that it's just a different story when you're exploring with the plant medicines. And I think it's a really beautiful practice. But I haven't felt extremely pulled right now.
Yeah.
I think I could see myself maybe doing like mushrooms or something.
Cool.
We'll
I brought you a chocolate. So,
oh, great.
So maybe down
I brought you chocolate too, but
Really?
it doesn't have anything in it other than cacao and dates.
Exchange chocolates. Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of people ask me about smoking weed. I used to be a huge stoner from like ages 17 to 23.
Okay.
And then there's like this, I remember it very distinctly, like senior year in college, where I just remember like smoking before this party and just feeling so fucking insecure.
Wow.
Like I just felt so insecure. I felt so disconnected from my body. Like I remember being at this house party and literally going in the bathroom like every 3 minutes to see like am I okay? Like,
right.
And I was just like, okay, this is not serving me anymore. Here's the thing. Cannabis is actually very, very medicinal. But most people, like most things in America, people bastardize things and they lack the intention, right? Like cannabis can save lives with cancer patients and other people who are really navigating challenging terminal illness.
Totally.
A majority of people that I know who are smoking weed in America just do so very recklessly, and they use it as a tool to just numb themselves and escape their reality rather than actually use it as a tool that can like expand their consciousness or creativity. And then from like a neurological level, the way that I like to explain it to people, because people think like mushrooms and weed are similar and they're so fucking different.
Yeah.
Right? Like just from a neurological standpoint, when you're smoking cannabis, you are dramatically reducing blood flow to the hippocampus part of your brain, which is responsible for learning and memory, which is why most people who are stoners who've been smoking weed habitually for a long time have terrible long-term memory. Mushrooms, on the other hand, increase neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Like they are enhancing the way that your brain functions. And they're also reducing blood flow to the amygdala part of the brain, which is responsible for fear. So you're essentially starving fear from your brain, enhancing neuroplasticity. So mushrooms are like superpowering your brain, and smoking cannabis is destroying your long-term brain health. Wow. That's the way that I like to break it down. Again, I used to be a stoner for 6 or 7 years, so I'm not judging anyone who still smokes. Just from my observation, most people who are doing it in America are using it to just numb themselves and escape their reality.
I think so. And I agree with the medicinal aspects of it. I know people personally who use it for pain. anxiety management, all these things, but it can also work in the reverse. And I know that they're completely different from mushrooms. So I revere the mushroom. I revere the fungi. I use them in my culinary experiments, the non-psychedelic kind for sure. And they're very medicinal. So maybe one day. Yeah.
What is something that we have not touched on today? Like, are there any questions you have for me? Is there something that's close to your heart that we didn't get the chance to talk about that you want to make sure we do?
Think about that for a second. I think that this was a really well-rounded conversation. I think that there's so many more things that we could touch on, right? In terms of like society maybe being disconnected from their bodies in general, not just women, and like why are we nervous system dysregulated and why are we so disconnected from nature and all these other sort of holistic conversations. But I really love that today we focused on what's happening in the world of women and female health and female empowerment, like going on the psyche side of things, and interesting conversations about relationships and
for sure.
And spirituality. I loved this conversation.
So obviously you've pursued Kabbalah pretty deeply. Like you're almost a guru at this point.
Definitely not.
I know. I'm just fucking with you. But I'm curious to know, I don't know if I've asked you this. Have you considered converting to Judaism?
I think the honest answer that I tell people is that if I ended up falling in love with a Jewish man and plan to have children with him, that's probably the time that I'd convert. But right now, I think I just really enjoy Judaism. For everyone listening, I'm not Jewish. So I really enjoyed the Jewish culture, the Jewish ideals. I didn't grow up with a lot of tradition in my household. I grew up in a very open feeling household. I'd say my mom is pretty spiritual. We didn't have any semblance of going to church or a specific God or anything like that. And my parents did that very much on purpose. And so I think being exposed to a culture that has so much deep tradition in it, like Judaism, and the way that you guys do it it feels at home for some reason. And I was exposed to it because I was dating a Jewish man for so long. And when that relationship ended, I still felt very called to take on the practices. I still practice Shabbat every Friday, and I don't think you have to be Jewish to do that. I think it's just a very light-filled activity. Even in Kabbalah, they say you don't have to be Jewish to take on Shabbat. It's really just a day where you're taking in the light and you're pausing, right? To disconnect, to reconnect. And so, I'd like to keep learning about it and continuing the culture around it, but to do a full conversion is like a whole thing that, because I think especially I didn't grow up with religion, it doesn't feel like I need to identify with it. Like, another thing I tell people is I study Kabbalah, I practice Shabbat, I'm not Jewish, I'm not religious, I sing Hare Krishna, right? So for me, I just try to keep up with these practices, or I don't try to. I keep up with practices that make me feel like I'm being connected to the light, and these things do that. And I think I'm better for it, and I think that the collective is better for it, because if you're leading with light, then it's good for everyone. Yeah. So actual conversion, if I'm gonna have some Jewish kids, then maybe. But otherwise, I'll just keep on doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
The honest answer.
Have you been to Israel?
No.
Oh, you need to come. I'll be there all summer if you want to come visit.
Okay, that's a probability. Yeah, we almost went after India to like break up the travel back home, and then it was just like we were there for 2 weeks.
How long is that flight from India to Israel?
I don't know. I think I can't remember if there was a direct flight. We were looking into it. Yeah. I want to say 6, but I could be completely wrong. We'd have to Google that.
I think you're going to really appreciate it.
Oh, I think I'd fall in love with Israel. Yeah. I've had every person that's been there tell me like you wouldn't want to leave. So,
yeah. That's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Something that you just said too, something that you just said that is like a beautiful, oh my gosh, Parker, maybe that's a sign that our time is coming to a close. Wait, no, what did you say though? Oh, no.
Let's remember.
Actually, what's really interesting is like, I think, and I fall into this category too. I think religion has been really bastardized, to use that term again. Like religion has jaded so many people in America, especially. And it's unfortunate because I think religion can be a beautiful tool to expand your consciousness and feel more connected to the creator. But the way that it's pushed oftentimes in America is like, if you don't follow every single rule that we have, then you are not religious enough. You are not going to heaven. Like all of these different stories and narratives. I met this girl yesterday at this party. She was telling me a story of like, her family grew up super ultra Orthodox in this area of Brooklyn. And then when she turned 16, like her parents made the decision, like they recognized like, this is not what feels best for our kids. Like it's a very closed environment. So they moved to this other part of the town and moved to like being modern Orthodox instead of like the crazy, like ultra Orthodox people. And basically, their entire family, their entire group of friends disown them. Like to this day, 7 years later, she's 23 now. And like all of these people completely just said, peace out. Like you're not one of us now. Yeah. And I found that so disgusting, especially with the Jewish people, because the Jewish people are literally 0.2% of the world's population. So for this ultra Orthodox group of Jews to essentially disown another group of Jews because they're not religious enough is absolutely contrary to the whole idea of being connected to God. Yeah. God would never say, oh yeah, those people aren't religious enough, just pretend like they don't exist, like completely exile them. Yeah. No.
Well, what they probably think is that they're doing it in the name of God, right?
Which is so it's very interesting. And I mean, it's a whole different conversation, but I know that was my experience for most of my adult life.
It hurts.
I never felt religious enough when I would go to these different like Jewish Shabbat dinners. Like they would see a tattoo, they're like, you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. I'm like, really? Like, because I have a couple of small tattoos. I'm not part of the tribe anymore. Like, come on, guys. Thank goodness. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes really traumatic events to change. Yeah. Whether it's in our individual process, but like as a collective as well. We saw with the pandemic how many people became more awake and aware during that time. And also October 7th for the Jewish people. Yeah. Many of them, like myself, were disconnected from Judaism. And that experience brought a lot of us together. Yeah. And it removed a lot of the walls. Like, oh, you're Orthodox, you're Reform, you're conservative. No. Who gives a fuck?
You're just Jewish.
Yeah. Like, guys, come on. We're all on the same team here. We're all on the same team. Let's not create any more unnecessary divisiveness.
Yeah. It also did divide people. I think.
Oh my God.
There was a lot of division.
Oh, crazy.
During that time.
It was probably one. You know Rick Doblin?
No.
So do you know MAPS organization?
Maybe.
So it's like they've been around for like 40 plus years, like the leading organization for psychedelic research.
Oh, maybe.
And I was with Rick like last year. We had a fundraiser dinner for them. And he said, he's like in his 70s. He's like, October 7th is by far the most divisive event that's happened for the spiritual community. Wow. Right? Because there's all the people like Free Palestine, saying what Israel's doing is a genocide. People who are, for the most part, pretty uninformed about the whole situation. Yeah. And then, you had on the other side of the spectrum, a lot of Jewish people in the community who felt like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely insane, and felt very ostracized. Yeah. It's a very sensitive subject. Very. Yeah. What's interesting though, and I think, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, is the truth becomes very clear when you actually go to Israel. The truth becomes so clear. Number one of the biggest things that you'll hear people say who are anti-Israel is that Israel is an apartheid state, right? Now, if you know anything about what apartheid actually means, you would know that it's completely false. Over 20% of the population in Israel are Arabs. It's definitely not an apartheid state. And those Arabs, by the way, the Arab Israelis love living in Israel because if they were in Jordan, if they were in parts of Egypt, if they were in Lebanon, if they were, God forbid, in Iran, they would be persecuted. Israel is the only place where they actually feel at home and they feel safe. But more importantly than that is the way that the people in Israel speak. When you're there, it's you'll never hear like an Israeli say, fuck Hamas, we need to get our revenge, we need to kill them. It's all about actually like just coming together and returning the hostages and just bringing more light.
Yeah.
On the other side of the spectrum, it's a completely different conversation, right? And I think you can learn a lot about that when you actually experience it in person. That's why I say everyone who has an opinion on the whole situation in the Middle East, go to Israel and actually spend time there and build your own opinion through your own experience, rather than watching CNN, rather than scrolling on TikTok, right? Really have your own experience.
Yeah. Well, I'll say two things, which is one, I had friends on both sides during that time, so that was an interesting experience. And I didn't really want to speak on it too much publicly at the time, but it felt like, everyone was like, if you're silent, you're also doing wrong. But I kept relatively silent in the beginning, and I had conversations with both, and it's radically different opinions on both sides. But thankfully, the people that I was around for the most part were all very open-minded and just like wanted to educate.
Yeah.
Because I think most people just actually didn't really know what was going on. They just saw like Israel or Palestine and pick a side or else. And there was so much pressure, and that's really unfortunate. Yeah, a lot of divisiveness and a lot of togetherness during that time. And you just spoke on this idea of like, go to Israel and then you'll actually see. And I think that's something for people to remember in the context of any sort of divisive conversation. Like, have you actually experienced what's going on aside from the Israel-Palestine conflict? Are you actually experiencing what's going on? Are you watching it on the news? Are you watching dogmatic information? Pause and maybe try to put yourself in the situation, or travel to different parts of the world and see what's really going on there. Maybe don't travel to a war zone. But life gets a lot different when you actually see what's going on
For sure.
there versus seeing what's happening on a screen via someone else's narrative that's being fed to you and then just spewing that out as truth. There's a lot of fake news. There's a lot of false information, misinformation, disinformation. It's funny, my undergrad actually is in media and communications, and we took a whole class on like the disinformation that happens in the media, both ignorantly, so like unknowingly, and also on purpose. People on purpose spreading dangerous fake lies to the world. So there's a lot of that going on. And if we can just be as compassionate as possible and as educated as possible as we can, doing the research that we need to, then I think the world will be a little bit better.
One of the biggest things that I think is going to impact the entire mainstream media platform is this idea that actually might come to life, right? There's momentum building around RFK removing Big Pharma's ability to advertise on television.
Yeah.
Because right now, America and New Zealand are the only two countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical companies to run advertisements on TV. And what's interesting about that is 75% of the ad revenue from these networks like ABC, like CNN, come from pharmaceutical companies. So imagine if all of that gets pulled. These companies literally will lose 75% of their revenue. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Are they going to start speaking truth now? Are they going to stop being a slave to Big Pharma? It's going to be interesting to see if RFK can actually execute on that idea. And if he does, it'll be an absolute game changer for the future of health in America.
Oh no, people are going to have to start coming back to their bodies and learning how to eat right and live right.
Oh, shit. Sloan, you're absolutely incredible. So glad we were able to make this happen. Really, really grateful for your existence in the world. yeah, just really very happy that we made this happen.
Really my pleasure. Thank you so much for hosting me here. This is a
Yeah.
great conversation.
Any final words for the people? You can look into that camera.
You know, don't be extreme. Do what feels right. Knowledge is power. Educate yourself and be tapped in, whatever that means to you.
There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the one and only Parker Sloan. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow Parker on all of her platforms. Make sure to check out her podcast. We'll link it all in the show notes. Much love, everybody. Peace.
Thank you.
Let's go. Woo! You did it. You made it to the end of the show. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your support in listening to this podcast. And really, my mission here is to deliver the best conversations, the best people, so you can continue elevating and becoming the best version of yourself. And all that I ask in return is that you actually take action on the things that we talk about in these conversations, whether it's certain habits to implement or certain thought patterns or belief systems that you want to reprogram and remove from your life. I just want to remind you that your life is your gift and you are the creator. You are the main character of your movie. So please, please take action on these things we discuss. And tag me on social media. Tag me on Instagram in your stories at Jeremy Awakens. Let me know what stood out the most to you. Let me know what were some powerful moments for you from this conversation. And finally, if you haven't already done so, it would mean the world if you left a review for the podcast. Word of mouth is our oxygen. This is what allows us to reach more people and impact more lives. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you next time.